Today we're going to be taking a look at a couple of dozen different photos I snapped with my iPhone 13 Pro Max, all using the night mode at nighttime. They were all taken around 10, 11 o'clock at night, so it's definitely dark, it's late, but there are some lights around the area, so it would be interesting to see how these pictures turned out and just how good the night mode is on the iPhone 13 Pro Max. Let's head over to the computer. Now this first shot here I took on the boardwalk and looking south, and you can kind of see some buildings here in the background, and you see just how bright these lights look and just how bright everything looks for it being nighttime. But you will notice right up here towards the top of the picture there is some pretty good lens flare going on, which seems to have been a pretty big problem ever since the iPhone 10 was introduced. And before that there was a little bit of lens flare, but not to the point where we're seeing it today. Ever since Apple started introducing multiple lenses to their cameras, it seems like the iPhone lens flare is getting worse, and I really hope this is something that gets fixed in the future. Now you can see just how vivid this sign looks with the night mode, because look at how red and how deep colored this is right here, even though it's pitch dark outside and all we have to work with are a little bit of lights from the boardwalk here. This picture, I tried to take a picture of this plant to try to show how much detail or color would come through, but I think because these lights are on over here, it kind of took away from that a little bit. But you can see because of the HDR in the camera just how bright these lights appear, and it makes this plant look pretty decent for being 11 o'clock at night. This photo was taken in a very dark spot. All you have is a little bit of those lights you saw from the other pictures kind of shining onto this gate right here, but other than that, surrounding it was all pitch dark and you really couldn't see much. So I was pretty impressed with just how well this photo turned out given how dark it was. You really don't see it being very grainy or distorted at all. So I think this is a pretty good example of how good the night mode can be on these cameras. This one was just like a cool little shot I took taking a picture of a mirror, and you can kind of see all the reflections, and I just thought this picture turned out really great as well. It was taken near that same gate, and all of the highlights in this picture and the colors all look very good for it being so dark outside. Now I think this picture is a better representative of what kind of night mode photography you can expect to get on a plant, for example, without the lights interfering. It was a little bit blurry. The focus did not come in as good as I would hope right here, but nevertheless, it's not bad for a night mode picture. This picture I think turned out to be just gorgeous. I don't know, let me know what you guys think in the comments, but I think this picture is like a perfect example of what night mode does and why you want it, right? I mean, to be able to take pictures like this at nighttime on an iPhone, I think is amazing. Now this one was obviously taken with the selfie camera. That's me standing there on the boardwalk. Your pictures are never going to be as good with the selfie camera, even though it does support night mode now. It's just not as sharp, it's not as clear, but you're always going to get a better shot with the rear camera than you are with the front-facing camera. Here's another great example of just how good the night mode photography can be. I think this is another excellent picture taken by the iPhone 13 Pro Max. Now I tried to get a good shot of this car, but it seems like anytime that there is like a bright light in the picture when you're doing night mode photography, it kind of overwhelms the picture a little bit. And since this is a black car and a white light, I feel like a lot of the details didn't come through on the car that maybe would have if this light wasn't here. So one of the most important things when you're taking a video or taking a picture is the lighting, guys. And the lighting can make all the difference in just how good a picture looks. And this is a good example of how the light can kind of ruin a picture. On the flip side, this is a great example of how lighting can actually help the picture. In this picture we have that same light, but in this case it's shining down on top of this plant, and just look how vivid this looks for being at nighttime. It's almost like this picture was taken during the day. Very impressive if you ask me. And now this picture I took on purpose because I knew it didn't look good when I was framing this shot. So the idea I had in mind when I took this picture was to show just how bad the night mode can also look if you're not framing a shot well. Like you have this light very close to the camera, closer than any other object here, and not only does it produce this lens flare here, but it completely overwhelms the picture and makes everything else look kind of dull. So back to what we said before, you need to keep the lighting in mind when you're trying to take a good night mode shot. It's more important at nighttime than it is during the day. Here's another great example of just how vivid the colors can be in a night mode shot. This sign comes through with some very nice bright nighttime colors with the yellows and the blues here and even the reds. This shot I think is another poor example of how bad the night mode photography can look. So you got the lens flare up here. My lens was not dirty, but for whatever reason this type of light right here in the middle made the whole picture look very blurry. So this is a less than impressive shot with the night mode photography, and I'm glad that we had some examples like this just to show you guys what you can expect in the real world if you're going to be using this on your iPhone 13 Pro Max. Now I think this is another great example of just how good the night mode photography can look. You really see like the highlights here, you know, you just kind of see how bright these lights are from the balcony, the lighting underneath the trees and stuff. The phone really did a good job capturing the ambience of this picture, because I can tell you, being there, it looked just like this in real life. So the night mode really didn't embellish anything here. It just took the picture exactly how it really looks, and I think it did a fantastic job. And this was taken in the same area, just trying to show what kind of details we could get on this plant. And for being a dark nighttime shot, I think it did a pretty good job here as well. If you're watching this outside, you might not be able to see this, but if you're in a dark room right now watching this, you can see just how good the stars showed up in this night mode shot. I was very impressed. You can actually see the constellation Orion right here, super clear. I'm not a huge constellation person. I don't know what all these constellations are, but you can clearly see them here in the shot. The stars showed up very nicely. Another great example of just how nice the night mode can look here. Now I think this shot is like kind of so-so. Because we have these bright lights, it kind of dulls everything else around it. And again, it goes back to how much light is in the picture and the angle of the light, and that makes all the difference of just how well the picture is going to show up. Now this was another selfie I did. This one I think turned out slightly better than the last one, but why? Again, because of the lighting. There was a brighter light in front of me, so it was able to capture a little more detail on my face and my eyes, but you can see the picture quality itself is still a lot softer and duller than on the rear facing camera. I think this shot turned out pretty well of these plants here by the beach. You can definitely see some details in these plants, like you can see the veins running through the leaves of these plants, and for it being nighttime, guys, I think that's pretty impressive, because just a couple of years ago you could never get shots like this on an iPhone at night. This one I just thought was a cool thing to take a picture of because of the colors of the bricks and the design here, and I think it turned out pretty good. Now this picture I took in order to kind of show just how bright the lights can look in certain situations. Like this sign says Cadillac, but it's very hard to read, and I even lowered the exposure for this picture, but it's still hard to read because these pictures are also in HDR. The brightness comes through sometimes too strong when you're trying to take a nighttime shot, and sometimes that bright light can actually ruin the night mode shot. And I think this is a good example of how the shot just got ruined because of how bright that light is, and the HDR on the iPhone just kind of messed it up in a way that it just didn't look that great. We have another great example here of just how well the night mode can look with all of the vivid colors here down at the bottom. And we do have a little bit of lens flare up here at the top, but it's not too bad. Sometimes that lens flare is just worse than others depending on the photo, right? This photo I think did a good job of picking up just how green this building looked from the lighting on the exterior of this building. And the night mode did a good job of accurately showing the real color of how this would look in real life. Same thing with this pool right here. This pool had a purple light on, and obviously the water is kind of a blue tint. And at nighttime, it did a pretty good job showing what color this really looks like. The Coke machine showed some really bright reds here, even though it was dark outside. Again, this shot I think is another poor example of just how terrible it can look. But one thing you can see in common here with all of these photos that don't look so good is we have a harsh light shining right into the lens. So anytime there's a big direct light like this and you're trying to take a night mode shot, it's probably not going to turn out good. So that's a good tip for anybody looking to take better night mode shots. Make sure you don't have any lights like this facing your lens, because almost certainly it's going to ruin the shot. And this is a great example to show just how much lighting is important. We have lights here, but they're facing these trees, and it really makes the trees light up with this nighttime ambience. We do have a couple of bright little lights over here, but honestly these lights that are shining on the trees are so much brighter that it kind of cancels this out, and you can still see some really nice colors on these plants. And here's a good example of taking some flower pictures at nighttime. The light you can see was obviously coming from this direction up here, kind of shining down on it from behind. But even then, I think this shot turned out pretty good. Here's another one that kind of shows how nice the colors can turn out as well with a night mode shot. Now this one, I don't know if you can even see this. Can you even see what's in this picture right here? But we actually have a raccoon in the bushes here, but he's pretty well hidden. I thought it would turn out better than this, but you know, this is another good example of how bad the night shots can be sometime. I mean, I don't like this picture at all. I think it turned out horrible. This had to be one of the coolest pictures I took. You have not only the cool colors of the building here, but then you have this girl doing like some lightsaber photography, probably making like a TikTok or something right here. And with the purple lightsaber color and then this color of the exterior of the building just looks super cool. And I was pretty far away taking this picture. And I did this on the zoom lens, the 3x zoom on the iPhone 13 Pro Max. And I think this picture turned out pretty damn good for a night mode shot. Same thing with this one here. This night mode shot kind of like is the epitome of just how good the iPhone 13 Pro Max night mode can be. And I think this is a great example of what you can expect from your iPhone 13 Pro Max night mode photography. So guys, you saw how the night mode shots turn out on the iPhone 13 Pro Max. Some of them are amazing, some of them are just mediocre, and some of them are downright terrible. But it does depend a lot on the photographer, and I have to admit, I'm not the best photographer out there, of course, and the lighting makes probably the biggest difference in how well your picture is going to turn out overall. It's mostly the lighting more than it's the phone's problem. So with a bad lighting and a bad photographer, you're going to get bad pictures no matter how good your camera is. And the vice versa is true. You can have a mediocre camera and mediocre lighting, but if you use it correctly, the pictures can turn out pretty good. And I think I did a good job showcasing that in this video. Find out if the iPhone 13 Pro Max is still worth buying in 2022 right over here, and I'll catch you guys over there.